The following program is brought to you by Total Theater Online. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of the staff or management of WGBB. You're listening to the station that serves your community, 1240 WGBB. And now it's time for Dave's Gone By with David Lefkowitz.
There goes the Daverhood. Welcome, everybody, to the 93rd episode of Dave's Gone By, brought to you by Total Theater, Hewlett Minuteman Press, and Quiznos of Hewlett on this Thursday, September 9th, 2004, 2 days before September 11th, a date we remember with such sorrow and emotion because, as we all know, that's the day John Ritter died. No, aside from that, it is, of course, the third anniversary of the day that shook America, the day that changed New York, the day that made us live in fear and suspicion and insularity, and allowed the government to keep us living in fear and suspicion and insularity, masked, of course, by flag-waving xenophobia and us versus them politics. But we're not going to get too political on this episode. I've been there and done that the last few weeks in response to the Republican National Convention, which, thank God, is over. But we are going to mark the solemn anniversary of the Twin Towers collapse with someone who saw it all up close and personal. I saw it all on TV. I was working in Queens at the time. I stopped for coffee before getting to the office that morning, and at the bodega they had a TV on, showing a plane smashed into the tower. And I couldn't ask what was going on because everybody there spoke Spanish, but I figured, oh well, aviation accident, so it goes. Didn't even think about it on the walk to work. When I got to the office about 10 minutes later, well, the radios were already on, and everybody was wide-eyed and ashen in a what-the-hell's-gonna-happen next mode. And we did see smoke, black smoke, billowing in the air from a distance. I stayed for an hour or so, then I grabbed the first Long Island Railroad train heading east, and I managed to make it back home by 1 o'clock, where my wife and I basically spent the next day and a half watching TV. Not the most interesting or courageous 9/11 story, that's for damn sure, but tonight, my guest is all that and more. He started as a hero, a rescuer in Lower Manhattan, and then, within a matter of seconds, he became one of its victims, and miraculously, survivors. His name is Alfredo Fuentes, former New York Fire Department captain. He's the author of American by Choice, which recounts his extraordinary experiences on September 11th and in the months following. And he'll be visiting the Daverhood in just a few minutes. But it's not all grief and grimness tonight. Like all Dave's Gone By shows, this one's a mix of talk radio and music and culture and comedy. So we'll also have our weekly theater segment, Inside Broadway. The topic tonight: which beloved rock musical is getting a star-studded one-night-only concert on Broadway September 20th? Stay tuned to find out. And yes, tonight also marks the return of the News Gone By, world and local news events, given a Jon Stewart meets Harry Shearer twist from the twisted mind of yours truly, Dave. Dave Lefkowitz, radio personality, theater critic, journalist, and humorist, bringing you smart talk, silly talk, sad talk, and music tonight. The rating is DGB-13, the station is WGBB, the time is 7:00-something, and the place to stay is right here, right after this. I've been telling you for months why you should use Hewlett Minuteman Press for all your copying and printing needs, but here's one of the owners, Mike Toron, to tell you why.
Hi, how you doing? At Minuteman Press, our ultimate goal is service. We are your best source for the most complete line of printed products. You can check us out on the web at www.hewlett.minutemanpress.com.
If they asked me, I could write a book. Well, they did ask me, and I did write a book, a collection of my comedies called Marriage, Babies, and the End of the World. If you like farce, there's The Triple Wedding. If you like dark comedy, there's Last Respects. If your taste runs to the absurd, Blind date, something for everyone in marriage, babies, and the end of the world. $20 hardcover, $12 soft. Buy it now at 516-295-1511 or through the Days Gone By website. Inside Broadway, brought to you by Total Theater's Performing Arts Insider, your everything theater guide. Along with Jesus Christ Superstar, it's probably the best-known and longest-lasting rock musical ever done. I'm talking about Hair, of course, the landmark musical that tried to bring the hippies' perspective to a wider, more conservative audience, and really did. The show moved from its first run at the Public Theater to Broadway's Biltmore Theater in April 1968, and it became the fourth longest-running musical of the 1960s. And yet, for all its culture-changing success, Hair hasn't maintained the luster of other tuners of the time. Sure, the CD still sells great and sounds great, with song after classic song like I Got Life, Easy to Be Hard, Frank Mills, and the thrilling finale. But there's been only one Broadway revival, a flop in 1977, a couple of poorly received off-Broadway stagings, and some failed attempts to bring the show back uptown. People point to Hair's intentionally scattered, almost plotless book as the reason why the songs still work, but the show usually doesn't. So what's the solution? Of course, to a concert of the songs. And that's exactly what they're doing September 20th at Broadway's New Amsterdam Theater, a one-night-only concert of Hair featuring a slew of theater stars. People like Wicked's Idina Menzel, Billy Porter, Harvey Fierstein, Lillias White, Hunter Foster, Norm Lewis, all conducted by Long Island's own Seth Rudetsky, who came up with the idea. Tickets are steep because the concert is a benefit for the Actors Fund, and the cheaper seats have already sold out. But if you're willing to part with $250 and up, call 212-221-7300, 221-7300 to let your hair down. And if you want more Broadway information to comb through, why not subscribe to Performing Arts Insider magazine? Performing Arts Insider tells you everything about Broadway, off-Broadway, dance, cabaret, and opera, and you can still get the September season preview issue for just $10 by calling 516-295-1511 or visiting TotalTheater.com. And you can subscribe, either for a monthly term or 21 full issues a year. It's expensive, but mention Days Gone By and get 10% off. So call 516-295-1511 or visit TotalTheater.com and get yourself the best Broadway magazine around, Performing Arts Insider. Inside Broadway will return in 2 weeks after the holiday, and we'll be talking about new Broadway shows like Reckless with Mary Louise Parker and Brooklyn, the Street Corner musical, plus a bunch of off-Broadway shows too. The convention is over, the fall season is here. Read all about it in Performing Arts Insider and hear all about it every week on Inside Broadway. We've just been Inside Broadway with Total Theater and Performing Arts Insider. Hey, this is Dave, and I'd like to tell you about some radio shows on AM 1240 at WGBB. Well, what do you hear on GBB? What do you hear when you're not hearing me? You hear Mike Shineri play very smooth jazz. Tuesdays at 9 you can dig what he has. Thursdays at 6 on GBB Tonighters. Hear Larry Davidson interview writers. Everyone, can't you see that it's fun and it's free on AM 1240 GBB? And what do you hear on the weekend airwaves? What do you hear when you're not hearing Dave? You hear Bonnie D. Graham host Long Island Dating. Fridays at 6 for advice about mating. Redman on Saturdays and rock is his mission. Tune in 7:30 for fresh new musicians. After that, Mikey and Jimmy at 9. Humor that straddles the FCC line. If you're a conservative, you're not alone. For Sundays at 7, you got Joe Salzone. It's all on the air. turn it on. If you're there, I am 1240 on Thursdays at 7, it's me. Thank you. Welcome back to Dave's Gone By on AM 1240 WGBB Freeport and live streaming on the web at AM1240WGBB.com. Time for Dave's Got Guests, and I have a very, very special guest on this September 9th. His name is Al Fuentes, perhaps not a household name, but he's got an answer to the question I think we've all been asked or asked other people. Where were you on that morning? Where were you on September 11th? What were you doing? How did you find out? Did you see it physically? Did you see it on TV? Captain Al saw it for himself and felt it for himself, and he's written a book about it. It's called American by Choice, and it's published by Fire Dreams Publishing Company, with a portion of the proceeds of the book going to charity. So, Captain Al, welcome to Dave's Gone By.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate you giving me the time.
Tell us, I guess the first obvious question is tell everybody about your time on that morning. You got up, and you figured it was going to be a light day because it was just after Labor Day and...
Exactly, Dave. It was a beautiful day, and we were starting winding down for the summer business season in the harbor. And I went to work. We start there at 7 a.m. And no sooner than that, my secretary came running in, Kathleen, and said that a plane had just hit the North Tower. We are situated right at the river, at the East River, at the Brooklyn Navy Yard.
Well, explain the Marine thing. You're a firefighter, or were, before you retired, a firefighter, but part of this, the last thing you were doing was Marine-based?
Right, exactly. I was the acting battalion chief of the Marine Division for the fire department. I was responsible for the harbor, the 560 miles that the fire department covers in the New York City harbor.
Okay, so...
And we are located at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. So right from my window, Dave, I could actually see the two towers. You can almost feel like you can touch them. So sure enough, I looked out the window and I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the gaping hole and the fire and the smoke on the North Tower. I went right into my mode and I asked the fire boats to surround Lower Manhattan, the Battery Park area, because I figured the West Side Highway and the FDR were going to be impassable. So my concept was to transport firefighters to the waterway and to remove injured civilians that way.
Okay. And so you started doing that, or trying to do that, and you got into the area. I mean, you weren't on the water. I mean, people might have that impression. You got on land, unfortunately. And
well, that's exactly what happened, Dave. I responded with Marine 6, and as I responded, just so you know, the second plane came right over my head, Dave, and I could hear the engines roaring, and banked its wings and crashed into the South Tower. At that time, Dave was the first time he registered, and I remember saying to one of my firefighters, we're under attack. Right. And sure enough, being the acting battalion chief, what I had to do was report to the command post. So we went into the marina on the Hudson River, and we just 3 blocks away, and I reported to Chief Gansey and Ray Downey, and we were right on West Street in Vesey, where the command post was.
Mm-hmm. And so, at that point, you even said, or in the book, it isn't about putting out the fire. It's pure rescue mode, I think.
Well, we knew at that time that we were, it was incomprehensible. We weren't going to put this thing out. We had to try and do the most we could to save as many civilians as we could. We wanted to evacuate the buildings. We knew the building's infrastructure was going to be, there was going to be no water.
But you also figured that the lower half, and I figured this too, this is what surprised the hell out of everybody, that they came down completely, not the top floors.
Dave, you're so right. In all my years, I've been 26 years together, that's the way we operate, Dave. We go below the fire, and we operate from below the fire up to the area that we're going to operate. We figured that that was going to hold. That's where our operation base is. Never in my life would I think that 110 stories were going to collapse in 6 to 8 seconds in a cascade type of a mode.
I don't know if it was a rumor, or one of the stories that was being passed down on the news was after the first plane had hit, and it didn't bring the buildings down, it just hit, like a plane would. Like a lot of stupid people crash small airplanes into buildings. And there was this thing where people were leaving, and they left the building, and then said, okay, you can go back in. Did you hear anything about that? And then people went back in, and
When I responded, like I said, the second plane had hit, so the South Tower. So, no, I didn't hear anything about that. It was under my impression. I know that Chief Gansey had ordered the evacuations of both towers.
After the first.
After the first.
Right.
Whatever went on to the South Tower, I'm not sure. I did hear some situations that they were evacuating, and then they said no to come on. But to tell you the truth, because there was so much debris coming down, and there was and the jumpers, etc., they were concerned about the safety of the civilians evacuating the South Tower.
Okay. Since you mentioned the jumpers, this is kind of difficult, but if you could read a bit from your book, American by Choice. I picked out a passage here that's a pretty extraordinary sense of what was going on all around you at that time.
Yes, I will, Dave. I just, the civilians, God bless them, and they're constantly in our memory, and we always have to remember that they were involved in this situation. But I'll read from page 11, Dave.
Please.
All of a sudden, as I was standing near Ray, that's Ray Downey, I heard a piercing explosion. It sounded like a small bomb. What the hell was that, I wondered. I looked around and saw nothing, so I turned back to the men, and then I heard another dull boom, and another. I looked around just as a body fell into the concrete. Boom. People were jumping to their death. The bodies hit and exploded. Boom. Boom. It was 2 blocks away from the towers, but the sound made my heart sink. The bodies crashed onto the canopies, cars in the street. The noise was unbearable. Both the sight and sound were sickening and bone-chilling. I've been at fires where people have jumped out of windows to try to save themselves, but this jumping was different. These were the poor, innocent souls trapped on those floors above the fires who knew they had to make the horrific choice about death that day. To die by fire or by jumping. Their sounds didn't let up. This was a nightmare that I was to relive in the future. Give me a company. Let me get up there, I asked Ray again. No, we got to stay here, he was insistent. Boom. Boom. The people were jumping from all sides of the building now. I'm sure they said their prayers and asked God to forgive them for choosing to jump rather than to burn to death. I was grateful that those below the fires were starting to evacuate. As I waited for further orders, I kept looking up every few seconds to see when the next jumpers were coming. I was becoming obsessed with them. Firefighters responding to the towers had to ensure that the fallen body wouldn't strike them. A firefighter or evacuating civilian could be crushed to death. I saw some people jump in groups of 3 and 4, comforting each other for whatever it meant to die by holding hands. I could tell when women jumped by the color of their dresses or when their dresses flew back over their heads in the air. The people were just floating, and then they will come to that sudden, mind-piercing impact. It seemed to take about 8 seconds for a person to fall. That was what I saw from my position. Earlier, when I was responding on a fireboat, we had seen some figures jumping, but at that time, the reality hadn't registered. Once I heard the deafening booms of the bodies exploding, it registered. God bless him.
That's a reading from American by Choice by Alfredo Fuentes, who was a captain at that point at the FDNY. And the captain just crossed himself, just remembering that. And that wasn't even, it's sick to say, but that wasn't even the worst part of your day. It got worse for you.
No, it did, Dave, but I got to tell you, in many ways it was, because that's what we wanted to do, is help them.
Do you remember physically rescuing people?
Yes, well, we were involved in quite a few. When the South Tower collapsed, Dave, myself and Ray Downey, we couldn't leave. It was a different experience now, anything like we never experienced before, and we did quite a bit. I operated at the Oklahoma City bombing and some other places, and we just couldn't leave, and we went in and we assisted some people that were trapped in what was left of the Marriott.
Oh, man. And then what happened to you?
Well, at that time, we were able to get one firefighter out, Dave, and I gave him the high sign to come out. I have to held him up because there was some more debris coming down from the North Tower.
Oh, and pardon me for interrupting, but you should also explain that you've been in other fires, you were even at the first WTC bombing, but the smoke and the debris was different in this one. I mean, you describe it in the book. It had extra stuff in the air.
Yeah, without a doubt, Dave. The impacts from these planes was so severe that with the jet fuel that was involved, there were cross-country planes, so there was numerous thousands of gallons of jet fuel. So it was just quite severe that we had to. What we do is when the debris was coming down, there was such a damage to the buildings that we usually hold the firefighters up, and then when there's a clearance, we give them the high sign to come out. And that's what I was doing, myself and Ray. We were working on the Marriott. And we got one guy out, and then I held him up. Some more debris came down from that tower, North Tower, and then I gave him the sign to come on out. I was on West Street. My friend Ray was maybe about 50 yards in front of me, and we're in the Marriott, and then all of a sudden I heard that noise, and the North Tower came down, and like I said before, there was no time to run. It was just kind of turtle up and get ready for the hit, and said my prayers.
And all these people that you had been around trying to save, they were gone. They were assumedly dead. But you weren't.
Yeah. I was found an hour later, given the transmissions. My friends and those civilians went to a better place. Once they did recover me, my scalp was off. I had a severe skull fracture. My lung was collapsed. They both got burnt. I had 9 broken ribs and some other injuries. And they were able to locate me by my radio transmissions. I had a special radio that's we call it the super radio. I was commuting, talking directly to the dispatcher, and that's what they did.
Yeah, in fact, the book is sort of structured like that. You go back in time to tell your story of coming from Ecuador to America, and the chapters still begin with you signaling frantically, I'm on West Street, I'm on the West Side Highway, Captain 4, or I don't know the jargon, but...
Yeah, that's exactly, Dave. But one thing with this book, Dave, is it does tell my story, but then my wife, God bless her, she takes over when I'm in a drug-induced coma at Jersey City Medical Center, and the book is more about how people America responded towards me. It's not an I book. I don't, and I need to say that because I'm tired of hearing I did this and I did that, and it's, the man didn't want me yet, and thank God for my wife, my family, and the Americans, the way they responded to me. And
well, tell me about that.
Well, once I got brought out, these firefighters who came from home, Dave. It's unbelievable enough. It took them about an hour. Some came by ferry from Staten Island, and they were able to recover me. I was lucky enough. They took me by fireboat to the Jersey City Medical Center, to the Jersey front. At that time, I went into respiratory arrest. They gave me the arrest rights. They intubated me, and they took me to Jersey City Medical Center, and that's when they did a tracheotomy and put me in a drug-induced coma. To speed up the situation, I was released. I went to another hospital, pulmonary ICU in Montefiore. And then when I was coming home, I came home a couple of weeks later, and I tell you, Dave, America responded to me. It was like unbelievable. It responded to all the firefighters. I was getting thousands of mails and letters and great wishes. And every time I got one of them, Dave, I cried. I think I had enough. I cried enough to fill the Hudson River, Dave, and I just felt stronger and healthier. Well, and a lot of the stories are in here in the book with that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, considering the injuries that you suffered, you look great. You really look. I mean, you mentioned that your skull had been torn like in half almost, and all these. They did a pretty terrific job on you.
Yeah, they did, Dave.
Do you have any lingering problems or medical?
Oh, I do, Dave. I have quite a few issues. I have this. I was doing vestibular physical therapy. I have a vertigo situation where it was a couple of 2 spots died where we lack an oxygen, but that did a little memory loss, but not that bad. But I have this vertigo that's still ongoing, and then my lungs. So there's stuff going in my lungs, Dave. I'm working on that. I'm going to Sloan Kettering. We'll keep an eye on that.
Okay. And you're not a firefighter anymore, or you couldn't do that afterwards. They retired you, I guess, with full honors and stuff like that. So you tell me you're doing something else rather interesting now.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point now where I'm 90%, and that's good enough for me. I can never complain, Dave, until I saw everything. And I've been working on my therapy, and I've been gotten to the point where I'm healthy enough to go to work. And right now I'm consulting with Homeland Security and Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee, and we're working on this. And I feel like I'm back. I'm back in the saddle, and I'm contributing, doing my part in what I could do to make this country better and safer.
Now, there are certain things that are classified information you can't mention about working in Homeland Security, but that seems like such a secret society to most Americans. All they do is put out these alerts, and we don't really know what they're actually doing. It's a bunch of guys who are experts and get together and try to do what? See how buildings can be more secure, or what?
Well, you know what it is. There's so many areas with Homeland Security. In this one situation, what we're doing is just we have some experts in the chemical, biological, nuclear, and law enforcement, on firefighting, and what we do, we assess certain cities, and we assess the capability of them to respond to a weapons of mass destruction type event. And what we do is we see what capabilities they have, what they're lacking, what their gaps might be, and then we try to put in some technology in those gaps. And Memphis is one of the cities that has been identified as being one of our pilot program, and that's what we're doing. And you know, we learned a lot from 9/11, Dave. We made a lot of mistakes.
What would be done different? Yes. Okay. What were the mistakes, and what could we do differently? Aside from not being afraid of box cutters.
In the book, like I said it, Dave, we were dead men walking that day, Dave. We were dead men walking. We were put in a situation, combat-like situation that we never experienced before. We need to address that. We need to address technology. There's shelf technology now, Dave, that can be used communication-wise to make this environment a little safer to the fire department. And I'll give you a perfect example, Dave. I was trapped for an hour, and I'm giving my reports, and I've listened to my reports for a while. They couldn't locate me. They didn't know where I was, okay? I was within a block area, but they had no idea. Right now, we can locate Joe LoJack right across the country in a heartbeat. And you tell me that we can't locate a firefighter, we know we have shelf technology that we can even put it in a chip in a radio, in the gear, etc., where we can just get a palm quarter, boom, they're right here, start digging here.
Well, and we can put something under your skin.
Exactly. I mean, there's a million things they can do. So we need to address those things. We need to have a memorandum of understanding, mutual aid agreements. For example, Dave, it took an hour for me to find out, to get there. You know, Jersey City Fire Department was on the other side of the tunnel. Not even a mile, Dave. And they were waiting to come in and to assist. But guess what? You know, we have regulations and we have to get approvals and this and that. They should have been there immediately helping out. And that's what we need to understand, that we can't do it ourselves anymore. We need to embrace the cities around us, including Jersey City, Hoboken, or whoever.
I don't know if anybody can embrace Hoboken, but I know what you mean.
And you know what? And they're professionals, and we need to all be in the same ballpark. We need to have interoperability with the communications, with their radios, so we can operate. Jersey City might be the next city to get hit, and we might have to go there. So this is some of the issues.
Well, actually, that does lead to the question, did you read the 900-page 9/11 Commission thing and watch the hearings? What were your thoughts on that? Whitewash, for real, somewhere in the middle?
Well, I'll be honest with you, they did address some issues, but I needed to get a little more into it. I mean, there was a lot of issues, Dave. Just the one that quickly comes to mind. I mean, our emergency operations center was on 7 World Trade Center. I mean,
I know
and they never even addressed that. You know, that collapse. You know, should it have been there? No, it shouldn't have been there. It should have been in a separate area. When we talk about target areas, vulnerabilities, obviously the World Trade Center was a high profile area. Well, we shouldn't be a block away from that.
Okay, so we've spent so much time about that horrible day. Let's go back to some mostly happier days of when you first came to this country. You were not born here. In fact, you moved here until you were, 9 or 10?
Yes, actually, no, Dave. I was 8 years old. I came from Guayaquil, Ecuador. And that was a happy day. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Dave, because, you know, I honestly believe that it's a privilege to live here. It's a wonderful country, and I was an immigrant, and that was the whole reason for writing this book. American by choice, meaning that I'm proud to be an American, and after what I witnessed 9/11, actually I'm even prouder.
But it was not terribly easy. The first place we moved was Harlem, in a rather difficult neighborhood. You were opposite one of those SRO hotels, they call them.
Yeah.
But I can imagine it was really exciting in that the reality sank in that you weren't living in the plaza kind of thing. But you also saw your first fire across the street.
Yeah, Dave, it makes me happy that you read the book. That's exactly right. We moved into a one-bedroom. There was 6 of us in 99th Street, West Side Drive, and there was an SRO at that time. The neighborhood wasn't as good as it's now, and it was more classified minorities, if you will, and there was an SRO across the street, and there was a lot of action going on, and sure enough, that was the first time I did see a fire, and I saw these Harlem firefighters pull up with this aerial and smoke coming out of the second floor, and the aerial goes up, and they were removing people, and I was it looked like organized chaos, and it was I fell in love with them. You know, and I've always had that in my mind, and sure enough, I was lucky enough to get into the FDNY.
Yeah, I mean, you were a plumber, or trained to be a plumber first.
Yes, I did. I was a plumber in Local 2, and I came from the great town of Woodside, and in Woodside, we believed so much in country and community, and basically you were either a cop, firefighter, or construction worker. So I was a construction worker, and I was a plumber, and then I was lucky enough to take the test to the fire department, and I got called.
And your folks were actually there on the day when you were accepted into the department. Now, they had a pretty rough time of it. Your dad couldn't find a job for a while. I mean, it's weird, the dichotomy of the sexes back then, because your mom was killing herself in the most horrible job imaginable. Yeah. And your dad wouldn't become a cook because it was demeaning. Yeah. So I'm a little...
that's so true, Dave. And you know what happens as immigrants, like all immigrants before me, they can only get certain menial jobs. My father was an accountant by trade, and he couldn't get that job. He couldn't speak the language, obviously. But my mother worked in a sweatshop, making handbags, and that's part of the stories in there. And the book is dedicated to them, Dave. It's dedicated to them and to all Americans.
Wow. Just one more story, though, about your mom, because I found this another rather amazing, on her first day on the job in this leather factory. What happened? Yeah,
Dave, she was nervous. We were getting close, Dave. My father hadn't had a job for a while, and my mother was just looking for work. So we were getting close to, my mother had said, I think we better go back. We got to survive. And so she got a job to my aunt at this sweatshop factory making leather handbags. And she was working it, but she usually used to work with the regular home type of...
little sewing machine.
And sure enough, this was more commercial types, and she was these needles were the heavy type commercial needles that go through the leather, and her hand got caught, and the needle went right through her palm of the hand and just pinned her against the table. And she couldn't scream, Dave, because they would have fired her right away off the back. And she held on to her friend to come next to her and just back off the needle. And she just wrapped up the hand, and she continued working. And
that day, she continued working.
That same day. And so that's one of the stories, and it kind of, to me, it shows her fortitude and her, determination to work for her family. And that's, I owe them so much, that it's just incredible.
Being somewhat on the left side of things, as I am, you're always suspected people who wave the flag and are like incredibly rah-rah pro-American because you think they have a conservative Republican agenda rather than just being very proud of the country and loving the people. Well, you can do that. It's all right. It's a pretty great country, and that's certainly how you feel and how you put it, and how you get it across when you talk to me, and also in your book, American by Choice, which people can get. How?
They can get it at 800-247-6553, or they can visit the website is www.atlasbooks.com, or they can either write to Fire Dreams Publication, P.O. Box 98, Island Park, New York 11558, and
could you give the phone number and the website out again?
Yeah, it's 1-800-247-6553, Dave.
65. And if they write to you at that address.
That's P.O. Box 98, Island Park, New York. And you can put Fire Dreams Publication, and it's $24.95, and I'll send you a signed copy. And I just understand that a major portion of this is going to be given to 501c3s, not-for-profit organizations, the Patriot Group, which gives back to first responders. That's what this whole book is about. It's not about me, and it's not about money.
I want to thank you for coming on Dave's Gone By on this September 9th. And I just want to wish you the best in all your work, because it is pretty important work that you're doing even now. You're not pulling people out of buildings, but hopefully what you're doing will keep people from having to be pulled out of buildings in the future. That's a terrible way of putting it, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do, Dave. And I tell you, Dave, I need to thank you, because, you threw me a curveball when you asked me to read a little bit on the civilians. And you know what? After I sit here and think about it, we have to remember them. And that's what this whole thing is about. It's about remembering 9/11, remembering what these people went through. And I thank you for keeping their memory alive. I really do, Dave. And it's been a pleasure. And hopefully some people get to read the book.
Captain Fuentes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The first plane hit the other tower right after I came in. It left a fiery gaping hole where offices had been. We stood and watched in horror as we saw the first ones fall. Then someone yelled, get out, they're trying to kill us all." I grabbed the pictures from my desk and joined the flight for life. With every step I called the names of my children and my wife. And then we heard them coming up from several floors below. A crowd of firefighters with their heavy gear in tow. Now every time I try to sleep, I'm haunted by the sound of firemen pounding up the stairs while we were running down. And when we met them on the stairs, they said we were too slow. Get out, they yelled at us, the whole thing's gonna go. They didn't have to tell us twice, we'd seen the world on fire. We kept on running down the stairs while they kept climbing higher. Now every time I try to sleep, I'm haunted by the sound of firemen pounding up the stairs while we were running down. Thank God we made it to the street. We ran through ash and smoke. I didn't know which way to run. I thought that I would choke. A fireman took me by the arm and he pointed me uptown. And Christ, I heard him whisper as the tower came roaring down. So now I go to funerals for men I never knew. The pipers play Amazing Grace as the coffins come in view. They must have seen it coming when they turned to face the fire. They sent us down to safety, then they kept on climbing high. Now every time I try to sleep, I'm haunted by the sound of firemen pounding up the stairs while we were running down. Of firemen pounding up the stairs while we were running down.
Sponsor me, Dave's Gone By. Run your ad, folks will buy. If you want to reach the public, sponsor me. Advertise on this program for incredibly reasonable rates with long-term discounts. See prices at davesgoneby.com or call 516-295-1511. Sponsor me. If you're wise, on Dave's Gone By, you'll advertise. If you want to be successful, sponsor me. Ooh, it's getting toasty in here. toasty in a tasty way because Quiznos subs transcend the ordinary. They're made to order with quality ingredients like freshly sliced premium meats, crisp vegetables, and rich melted cheeses, all piled high on artisan bread. I don't know what that is, but it's delicious and oven toasted to bring out the flavor. They've also got low-carb toasty flatbread, fresh crisp salads, hearty old-fashioned soups, and specialty desserts. Have you been to the new Quiznos in Hewlett? 1320 Broadway, same block as Loman's. Stop in and tell owner Ken, or anybody else working there, that you heard about Quiznos on Dave's Gone By, and you'll get 10% off your meal. In fact, stop into any Quiznos and mention this program. Nothing will happen, but, it's good publicity for me. Anyway, discover the extraordinary taste of Quiznos subs, 1320 Broadway in Hewlett. Toasty.
My radio's on, the news is all bad, but it's good to relax.
Welcome back to Dave's Gone By on this Thursday, September 9th, 2004. Not all seriousness, not all doom and gloom tonight, because it's time for the News Gone By, a look at events from the past week or so from an FDNY perspective. We begin with politics, of course. In the race for the White House, perennial also-ran and spoiler Ralph Nader got his wish last week. He will be on the ballot in Florida for the Reform Party. Florida, lest we forget, was the crucial state that decided the 2000 election, first one way, then the other. For his part, Nader has no illusions about winning the presidency in November, but he is confident that on Election Day he can pull a huge majority of Florida's black, Hispanic, and even white liberal voters. Asked about having Nader on the Florida ballot, Governor Jeb Bush said, "I'm sure he'll get a lot of votes." Damn sure. Well, New York City is still recovering from the Republican National Convention. No deaths, no terror, no overturned cars, one fire, one stomping, only 1,800 arrests, and enough police to subdue Fallujah, let alone Madison Square Garden. And George Bush made his big speech articulating his vision, Karl Rove's vision for America. And the GOP did get a boost from the 4-day onslaught, with John Kerry still seen by both sides as being too non-specific on his policies. I mean, he's been getting by with rank-and-file Democrats with his current line, "Vote for me, because unlike my opponent, I'm not the demon spawn of Satan." But to go for disenfranchised Republicans and fence-sitters, Kerry does have to establish a stronger identity. On the positive side, during a debate about the whole Vietnam Swift boat controversy, Kerry developed an earache, which not only gave him an excuse to leave early, but also brought him his fourth Purple Heart. No, but just as much as the Republicans gained from their recent gathering, the real winner seems to be a fella named Justin Gignac, Gignac. He's an artist who works with found objects. Quite literally, he picks up refuse from city streets and arranges it in small plastic cubes, each signed and numbered for authenticity. Normally, he charges just $10 for one of these items, called New York City Garbage Cubes, but Justin's currently offering a very special, limited edition version made up only from trash collected during the Republican convention. According to Justin's website, nycgarbage.com, the cubes contain trash from, quote, Republicans, protesters, reporters, the NYPD, Secret Service, and disgruntled commuters. Each box is unique and doesn't leak or smell. Justin adds that in the spirit of the Democrats, he's doing his part to help the environment by collecting all this junk off the streets. In the spirit of the Republicans, he says he's charging $100 a cube. That does include shipping, by the way, so if you want a piece of nostalgia from the RNC, visit nycgarbage.com. I don't know, it's obviously a great Warhol-esque idea, and I hope the guy does okay with it, but isn't the concept of Republican garbage redundant? I mean, Every time George Pataki opens his mouth, they have to send out sanitation crews. As a matter of fact, what Justin Gignac is doing with his Republican garbage cubes has a long and honorable tradition in circuses and carnivals. After all, once the elephants pass by, someone has to clean up their piles and piles of crap. In Mankind Will Never Change news, nearly 200 African refugees were massacred 2 weeks ago. They were staying in a United Nations refugee camp in western Burundi, trying to find safe haven from the endless war across the border in Congo. A UN spokesman said, quote, "People were sleeping when the attack happened, and they were killed as they were trying to escape. The scene is horrific. There are many people burnt. We have seen many, many bodies of children, women, and men," unquote. And UN officials are holding emergency meetings in Kinshasa to brainstorm, strategize, and come up with some desperate last-minute way to blame this on Israel. No, just kidding, but one of the heads of the UN mission did say, apparently with a straight face, quote, "The massacre will further complicate UN efforts to encourage Congolese refugees to return home," unquote. Oh yeah, I do think a bloodbath is not the invitation the Tutsis were hoping for as a signal that all is well. It'd be like Jews who fled the Nazis in the early 1930s being told by the Red Cross, "Oh, you just missed Kristallnacht. Come on back, we'll leave the gas on for you." In celebrity news, production had to be halted on the Paramount movie Aeon Flux when actress Charlize Theron was hurt on the set. She suffered an unspecified injury while doing her own stunts in the action flick. A Paramount publicist admitted that Theron was knocked around a bit, but she said, quote, "No cuts, no broken bones. I think it was something less tangible than that, something vague and nagging." Oh my God, she injured a Jewish accountant. Also in entertainment news, what happens when political correctness meets self-censorship? Ask Warner Brothers, which decided not to distribute a new film by David O. Russell. It was going to be part of a deluxe DVD re-release of Russell's cult favorite, Three Kings. That's the one where George Clooney and Ice Cube lead a band of renegade soldiers on a hunt for hidden Iraqi gold. Very cool movie, though it goes soft and silly in the ending. Anyway, the film was shot in Iraq, and Warner Brothers thought it would be a cool idea to send Russell back there to do follow-up stories on the real-life Iraqi extras in the film, which is just what Russell did. And he talked to refugees and political activists, and he showed the situation there. And lo and behold, he apparently came back with a documentary that comes down scathingly against the current Iraq conflict. And suddenly, Warner Brothers got nervous. They balked at putting out a partisan film on the eve of an election, fearing they might be legally forced to give equal time to the other side. Or, worse, the movie might be considered soft money, since the subject would implicitly support the presidential candidate against the war. Of course, that's all a lot of hooey. When Newmarket Films released The Passion of the Christ, the FCC didn't run to them and say, "Okay, let's be fair, now you gotta do a film about Muhammad," and they didn't have to make a campaign contribution to the B'nai B'rith. But as far as the Russell movie, I doubt Warner Brothers did much soul-searching beyond the initial look-over by their lawyers. I'm sure they saw the rough cut, realized it was controversial this close to the election, and bailed. Warner Brothers spokesperson Barbara Brogliati told the New York Times that distributing Russell's film alongside Three Kings would be, quote, "totally inappropriate. This is supposed to be a special edition of Three Kings, not a polemic about war. But this came out to be a documentary," she says. Here's the beauty part. This came out to be a documentary that condemns, basically, war, unquote. Isn't that marvelous? The movie is too controversial because it's against war. Not a particular war, although it uses Iraq II as a framework, just war in general. And that is too politically sensitive in an election year. I say, to be truly fair and balanced, to borrow an uncopyrightable phrase from an indigestible network, to be totally even-handed, Hollywood should release 10 anti-war films a year. After all, every other movie is 130 minutes of violence, sadism, and mayhem presented in an exciting, visceral, pro-war way. When you have Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, Tarantino, John Woo, Scorsese making all their movies about puppy dogs and ice cream parlors and friendly neighbors getting together for pinochle, then come and tell me one little documentary against war and violence is out of line. Also on the media front, well, I bitched and complained more than a few times on this program about censorship and the FCC and Clear Channel and the slow erosion of rights to free speech in this country. But it's good to be reminded that we're still way ahead of some other places on the map when it comes to open dialogue. Case in point, Singapore, where a DJ, Sheikh Hakel, was fired for being sexually suggestive and vulgar on his radio show. The government fined his station 30,000 Singapore dollars. That's about $1.50. No, just kidding. It's roughly 2 for 1. 30,000 Singapore is 1,750 American. Anyway, the station got fined and the DJ got fired, all because he took a phone call from a student who asked advice on how to approach a girl he liked. And Sheikh Hakel apparently advised the boy to ask what she looked like under her school uniform, and specifically to ask if she was wearing white panties. The student tried it, but alas, it did not go as planned. The girl was so shocked, she started trembling at the very idea of being thought of naked, and when he asked her if her panties were white, she paused a moment and cried, "Not anymore!" And that's the news gone by for September 9th, 2004. Please send your comments, opinions, and multicolored panties to Dave's Gone By. P.O. Box 62, Hewlett, New York, 11557-0062. That's Dave's Gone By, Box 62, Hewlett, New York, 11557-0062. Autumn is just about here. We're making a push for more listeners, more sponsors, more advertisers, so the more feedback I get from you, the listeners, the better able I am to promote the show, to market it, and keep its primetime place in the GBB lineup. If you're stuck around after the program the last couple of weeks, you've heard me doing kind of a post-show music hour, just doing the DJ thing and spinning records, a little commentary here and there. It's not officially part of Dave's Gone By, and it's only a temporary thing, but, well, who knows? With enough support, both financial and through emails and letters and word of mouth, there's no telling what could happen with Dave's Gone By in the months ahead. So please, if you want to publicize your company or service, now's the time. If you want to just say, hey, I love the show, keep it up, now's the time. If you want to remind your friends and relatives who don't live on Long Island that they can listen every week on the internet, again, now is the time. We've got our 100th show coming up in just a few weeks, so help us celebrate by doing your part. Write to me, Dave's Gone By at AOL.com, or snail mail, Box 62, Hewlett, New York, 11557-0062. We reserve the right to read your letters on the air, name withheld upon request. Send me greetings, send me gifts, send me gadgets, but please, no white panties. I already have a thong in my heart.
And that was news, yes, that was news. That was very, very, very special news.
Okay, listen to me. No, I mean, listen to me on compact disc, where bunches of past episodes of Dave's Gone By are yours to hear over and over again. Comedy sketches like the Baghdad elections and Handyman Yoni, guests like Neil Sedaka and Karen Grasley, puns, politics, and punchlines, all just $14 a disc, shipping included. Visit davesgoneby.com for all the details, or call 516-295-1511 for me on CD. Welcome back to Dave's Gone By. Hope you enjoyed this, our 93rd episode. Stick around with me till now, because I'll be doing another post-show hour of music, including birthday tributes to Otis Redding, Fiona Apple, and Moby. Cool stuff, so keep it right here with me at GBB. I want to give special thanks to my guest, Captain Al Fuentes, and wish him continued lifelong and long life recovery and much success with his book, American by Choice. Al's picture is on my website, davesgoneby.com, and if you click on it, That brings you right to the place to find out more about his book and his story. Dave'sGoneBy.com also tells you more about this program, as well as its fine sponsors. Hewlett Minuteman Press for copying and printing, 1315 Broadway in Hewlett, and right across the street, Quiznos of Hewlett for tasty, toasty sandwiches 7 days a week. Mention Dave at either fine establishment and get 10% off. The same goes for Performing Arts Insider Theater Magazine for a single issue and subscription information. I remind you also to listen to other programs on this radio station, including The Instrumental Invasion, Light Jazz, Tuesdays at 9, WGBB Tonight with Larry Davidson, Thursdays at 6, Long Island's Dating, Fridays at 6, then Saturday Night Rock Block with Redman and Mikey and Jimmy, 7:30 to 10, and of course, Your World with Joe Salzone, Sunday nights at 7. And don't forget, last week's guest, Tom Paxton, playing Joe's Pub this Sunday, September 12th. Now, next Thursday, no new show. The station will play Dave's Gone By repeat or a full program because I'm taking the night off for Rosh Hashanah. But I'll be back September 23rd with what promises to be a more jolly episode. Dottie Berman will be the guest. She writes and sings lightly funny cabaret songs, amusing novelty tunes about ordinary life, middle age, cell phones, Florida, dating. So do tune in for Dottie Berman 2 weeks from now. I wish a speedy recovery to my cousin Michael, a wonderful week to my wonderful wife Joyce, back teaching at school for the fall semester, and a happy new year to all of you. We're going to go out with a Robin Hitchcock tune written 15 years before 9/11, and the tone of it is something 9/11 was certainly not, whimsical. But it's been an aggravating summer, so we're entitled to a little whimsy, don't you think? See you in a few minutes with more music, and in 2 weeks with a new show. Until then, don't miss your days going by. This is Dave Lefkowitz. Good night. Shana Tova. Gone by.
My favorite buildings are all falling down. Seems like I dwell in a different town. But why the hell bother with painting them brown when they'll all be put down in the end? My favorite buildings stretch upwards for miles, remind me somehow of your favorite smile, like oak leaves in autumn cast, skating on style in the rain. Nobody seems to know how long all of these buildings belong, till they become part of you. People get down on your knees, buildings are like a disease. You could wind up in a zoo, and most people do. My favorite buildings are all laid to wait. You might as well sculpt a statue from toothpaste. And one day I could have a 50-inch waist that's all free for my